Hey, everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to get started. We're just chatting away about Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So hang tight. We're going to let the room fill up, and we will get started here in 2 to 3 minutes. But yes, so you can Klarna a Chipotle burrito now, apparently. I feel like that sends the wrong message. It basically says, because I Klarna'd some furniture. Like a couch is like $3,000
Yeah.
now, apparently, which I did not realize. And so I was like, okay, I'm definitely paying for that in installments if I can, and no interest. Like it's much easier. But if you gotta like Klarna your meal, I feel like that just sends the wrong tone to the guest. Where it's like, we're so expensive, you got to pay for this in installments.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the same where if it was something that was previously a store layaway program and now is taken over by a Klarna firm, whatever, sure, fine. Like it's no different than the $0 credit card deals to pay 1,000 at Lowe's and get, the grill you need. But I can't imagine doing a Klarna Chipotle burrito.
Everyday purchases, right? Seems odd.
What's that, John?
I said everyday purchases with Klarna. It seems odd.
Yeah.
I feel like that would rack up quite the bill over time. That you'd be in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not Klarna your groceries? I mean, I'm sure it is helpful for people, but overuse is a bad signal. I would say.
I also think too, to your point, like for those who it helps from an affordability piece, amazing. But as a marketing hook, I don't know that I would lead with that. I would just make it something that's available at the transaction page.
Yeah. What's interesting, like you're seeing Square now is like Square is actually enabling, because they have Cash App also. So they're enabling the ability for people to discover restaurants, number one, and then pay for their meals through Cash App, which is like maybe its own, like that's the Gen Z angle, I guess, towards getting them to discover new restaurants, maybe.
I mean, if what it's really doing is splitting the check to using one of those payment tools on the phone, then like, yeah, that's awesome because they're more used to doing that. And so if that enables them to come to your restaurant and have that feature versus having to ask for split checks, because we also know that not every Gen Z person likes to have an interaction with a server. So so it's like just taking the awkwardness away from that is like that's probably a +1 in their category too.
Yeah.
So true.
Well, that's a good way. That's a good way to take it. So appreciate those of you who are here live. Thank you so much for joining. We're gonna get rolling here. A bit of housekeeping up front. So John, Ellie, and I will talk for 35, 40 minutes of what I would call like moderated, structured conversation. There is a questions button in the bottom right of this platform, as well as a chat button. We will save the last 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. If questions come up, do not hesitate to drop them in either chat or preferably, more importantly, in questions. And I promise you, we will get to all of the relevant ones. That's the caveat. We'll get to all the relevant ones in the final 10 to 15 minutes. With that, I'll take it away. Thank you so much. I'm Abhinav Kapur, co-founder and CEO of Bikky. We are a customer data platform for restaurants. High level, we help brands take all their data across in-store, off-premise, digital channels, pull it all together, and then help brands understand when you pull a lever to grow the business on the marketing side, like running a targeted campaign, on the menu side, like launching an LTO, on the operational side, changing your service model. Instead of just looking at sales or looking at only your loyalty program data, we help you understand the impact of those decisions on traffic, frequency, retention, the things that ultimately drive sales in the first place by looking at all of your guest data. So it's a pleasure to be here with you all. We're going to be talking about why Postino built a modern, modular, and performance-driven tech stack. Modern and modular really, I think, stands for best of breed versus all-in-one. Modular specifically means having specialized tools, specialized platforms that focus on what they do best within the stack, integrate well together to help a brand unlock better performance in their vision for guest engagement, in their vision for segmentation, in their vision for executing on their menu, and ultimately driving better hospitality with their guests. So with that, I want to thank John from Sparkfly and Ellie from Upward Projects for being here. John, I'll pass it over to you for your intro as well, and talk a little bit about Sparkfly, and then we'll pass it over to Ellie.
Awesome. Thanks, Abhinav. Well, so excited to be here. So I'm John Greenlee. I'm Sparkfly's Senior Vice President of Revenue and Growth. I've been here for actually 9 years this week. So quite some time speaking with restaurant executives like Ellie in the space who have made the decision to go in a bit of a different direction with respect to how they build their tech stack and the reasons why they've done it in such a way. And so a little bit about Sparkfly. So we've been around for quite some time. We are an offer management and loyalty company that has done it a little bit different in the space. We've created a platform that allows our marketing partners to dynamically distribute single-use offers through pretty much any digital media or even print. And so the benefit of that is that we are able to track the real-time objective ROI metrics from any channel, from meta channels to email and SMS engagements to even direct mail and otherwise, so that our marketing partners have a real-time understanding of the performance of their campaigns with the opportunity to optimize in real time to maximize their time while they're in market. And as an evolution of the Sparkfly platform, we've also built a loyalty brain, an engine that sits on top of our offer management platform, kind of a headless loyalty solution that collaborates with amazing technologies like Abhinav and the team at Bikky, marketing automation providers, web and mobile applications, and otherwise, to bring together these more modular, best-in-class tech stacks to provide just maximum innovation and flexibility for folks like Ellie here. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Ellie.
Thanks, John. Also, happy anniversary. That's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had the pleasure of working with you and Abhi in a couple of different instances. And so I'm Ellie Ovsenik. I am currently the Director of Digital Marketing at Upward Projects, our restaurant hospitality group, which has a couple of different concepts underneath. The one we're talking about today, Postino Wine Cafe, is our growth concept, 34 units, a couple more coming next year. So we're in 7 states currently, and Phoenix, Arizona is our hometown home market and where we all operate out of. So in this role and in digital overall, I've been in restaurant industry for going on 6 years now, was in entertainment previously, but the restaurant industry has really captured my heart because I have a background in the service industry as well. So before I got any kind of marketing job, I worked my way through all the different aspects of server, bartender, hostess, busser, even some time in the kitchen. And so I think being able to be in an action-driven seat on the corporate side is really cool because you can see the improvements not only from the guest perspective, but also how you're kind of enabling the different team members who are really the conduits. They're activating the pieces that John and Abhinav's platforms put together. And so when we launch a new program, like we'll talk about a subscription program or, a guest engagement program in restaurant, making it accessible for those servers and for those restaurant leaders to be able to follow through on what we're promising to the guests through marketing is kind of how it all comes together. And that all those different facets have really led me into a very data-oriented place. So coming up through content marketing, social media, digital-owned platforms, paid media, really understanding there are so many different things to track, and they're all kind of coming out of these siloed single platform places. How can I best stitch that together to make sense of what the guest is exhibiting through different behaviors, what they're experiencing, through our direct marketing to them, or even through what they're being fed from keywords or looking at from external platforms? How can we really guide them through relationships that come back to the restaurant? And so Bikky and Sparkfly are part of, spoiler alert, are part of this modular tech stack that we've built. But what's really exciting about it is that the unlock to the data is kind of the key to making this a performance-driven engine. And I'm really excited to get into that with you.
No, I love that. No, data is key to what we're doing, especially in today's world where personalization is top of everybody's mind. And how do we get the right type of messaging and offers to the right customers at the right time in a way that's really, truly more meaningful than it ever has been in the space? I mean, I think it's our guests, especially younger generations, they demand personalization, right? And so creating the right tech stack in order to be able to create the right data structures and then actually implement on that externally is paramount, right, to the success of any brand in the space, and particularly Postino, who's doing it so well these days.
Thank you. I think what you said too, like there's the refrain I think that's been hanging out in our spaces for a while, which is like right guest, right message, right offer, right time. And like understanding that right means as determined by the guest, which is at the center of their personalization, which means that there's not a one scheduled send, a one offer type, a one core audience that's going to drive your business forward in meaningful ways, I think is something that, we all unpack in the way that we set up these systems to be able to perform to what does right mean for this restaurant location, this region, this age set, this purchase capacity, the person who is coming to my lunch day part versus my dinner day part. And like, if you're not able to see those different dimensions really cleanly and clearly through your platforms, then you're not really going to be able to fulfill on that promise.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm curious, as kind of maybe a first question or topic we can dive into here, is that, like I mentioned, I've been at Sparkfly for 9 years. I've had so many different conversations with executives in the restaurant space and outside the restaurant space. And a lot of it has come down to legacy all-in-one versus best in class. We saw the rise of legacy all-in-one over the years. And then we've seen this bit of divergence into brands saying, hey, it's just not good enough anymore. We need more specialty within our ranks of technology partners. When you walked into Postino, what did you walk into? Where were the first cracks that you kind of identified that gave you that aha moment that was saying, we need to make a change so that I can execute on a vision and a strategy that's going to be truly meaningful for the brand?
Yeah, great question. And I think too, just before I kind of like say where Postino was and where we are now and what we believe this engine can take us to be in the next couple of years, is just like touching on what you said from the all-in-one perspective. Is I really remember a conversation where when recency frequency metrics were starting to get automated through automation systems, comms systems, loyalty providers, kind of the all-in-one package. I really remember a pretty stark conversation in which a provider was saying, hey, we have the intelligence to predict your frequency when someone's lapsed. We're using all of our, aggregated customer data to provide these models so that it's really plug and play for your automation campaigns, which up front sounds great. Like, please take the mystery away from me. But when we were talking through it a little deeper and saying like, well, how does our brand influence the knowledge that your platform is starting with? Because your platform is an aggregate provider that's got fast food, it's got QSR, it's got polished casual. It's got all of these variants that we work with in our industry because we have, all of these different elements that comprise the dining experience that are not the same, and they don't have the same audience potential for traffic. And so when we really kind of got down to brass tacks, it was, well, it's a one size fits all aggregate. Like the way that we can move this learning forward is to do it sort of all at once, but it can't be specified. It can't be broken down. It can't be influenced actually by your individual kind of data set. We have to sort of pull it together as one collective, all customers to this platform. And I think, for where it was then to what is available now, your data set has to be the guiding cornerstone of what your campaigns are built on, what your assumptions are made, how you're talking to your audience. It's really just relevant to your behavior data set. There's a lot to learn cross industry, which I think like there's really cool features that both you and Bikky provide as far as like giving benchmarking insights and expected sort of campaign engagement. But it's bringing that kind of thinking, I think, to the forefront and saying like, no, per brand that I work for, like we should be at the center of the way that everything is built. And that's sort of my bridge into like the Postino assessment. When I've been there for over a year now. And when I came on board, it was really a question of, can you take a look? Can you do an audit? Can you kind of work through the potential of these different audiences? We had a couple of different platforms that were sending different comms based on whether it was to like the main brand or some of our sub brands that we call indies that are more regional to just the Phoenix metro area. Can you kind of understand the landscape of like, what we have tied together today and what is fractured. And so really having the ability and the time to take a pretty deep look, like get under the hood and say, okay, from a per customer perspective, do I know if someone is registered to this program? Do I see their order history appended to them? In that order history, do I see line item details, or do I just see a check summary total? If they had a redemption of some kind from an offer or a loyalty mechanism, how does that roll up into this overall data set where like the customer is always the nucleus? And so with that approach, I was able to kind of see the landscape of where were their connections today, and then really where did we need the connections to be? And that became the basis of our go forward with like finding the right vendors, really understanding what those vendors could like strengthen and build connection. And then that's really, I think, the most important thing that I thought about, which was when it's all said and done, how much more will we know about each individual guest?
Yeah, no, I love that. And the application of the technologies, once that data foundation is available to you, really truly unlocks that true personalization where that customer is the nucleus of their own world and of the marketing strategy. And you can put into place campaigns that are smart in a sense, right? That based on what I'm purchasing and when I'm buying, what day part, and so on, as you mentioned, like that's how you engage with me uniquely versus that batch and blast or that just general, maybe like loyalty angle where it's just, I'm just gaining points every time I come in. What's special about that these days?
Yeah. I mean, I've worked for a brand previously that it wasn't uncommon for someone to have one visit a year in a 12 to 14 month cycle. Like that was just kind of, there was a pretty strong use case for a certain audience demographic for that. So to your point, like, is points compelling as a loyalty experience to offer that set? Like the points will expire by the time you come back in, and then your purchase has to be significant enough to cash in on something related to those points. So really that's just like not a good fit. And so we really thought about a lot of different planning strategies for the audiences that we want to enroll in different aspects of our guest engagement programs on the Postino side, to say what's really going to feel natural to them and be an extension of their usage that also is where we know we shine from a dining, like a competitive lens.
No, I love that. And it's not just a swapping of tools, right? As you kind of are alluding to, it truly is like a fundamental change of the philosophy about how you market, how you bring marketing tech together to execute in such a strategic manner, right?
Yeah, it's what the platform, and so it's so interesting. I think you guys probably wouldn't give it yourself as much credit as I will, but it's what the platforms offer today, but what they will also offer tomorrow. I think something that's a hallmark of emerging best-in-class providers in our space and in other spaces is the commitment to internal R&D and just the idea that the products have the potential to change and move and grow and evolve, because there's a general company awareness that to solve today's problem is going to be different in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months. Like we were talking about buy now, pay later, a little bit like off cuff at the top of this call, but what happens when I come to Sparkfly and say, we have like a demand for, a banked interest, Postino bucks, like we need to address this kind of market condition and change. You guys are going to be like, let's solve this. Let's think about this. We actually are thinking about this too. We're aggregating from other clients who are giving us similar feedback. Like, I think that is also an indicator of those who are really committed to being best in class, because it's not something that you just reach once. It's a continued status.
No, yeah, it's probably one of the most exciting parts or conversations that I have on any given day is working with you and others, where you're saying it doesn't do that today, but could it, right? What could we go do together? And so it's not this like box that you're just have to operate within. It truly is like, hey, let's go build, let's innovate together. Let's create truly differentiated technology and experiences that are going to move the needle for your brand and your customer. I get so excited about those conversations all the time.
I know. That's where it's like, it's so easy to just kind of go into a little bit of like the building nerd out mode, because we see the downstream impacts. Like, and in our current program that we just launched with you guys for our wine club subscription, right? Like there's a daily offer, and in kind of routine systems, what would happen is that it would issue a new offer every single day for the exact same thing. It would clutter the wallet. It would clutter the guest experience. They would see iterations of the same tile over and over. There would just be lag between sort of what did I have yesterday at a timestamp, and then now do I have two because there are different timestamps before this one expires. Like there's all kinds of like little nagging technical implications. But you guys have a really smooth product that you were able to launch with us, so that was like the reusable, resettable, and so that it really is just this one present tile, this one present reward that we can apply every day. But on the data side, timestamps are updating. I can aggregate how many times a single individual is using it. I can see, are they using it in different locations? So like the guest has a really smooth experience, but as the person who has to look at the performance on the back end, the data that I need to see is completely clear from a bunch of different angles. And that's where I can then leverage it in a really intelligent way.
And that's actually a perfect segue to bring Abhinav back on camera here. Is that data, again, the data is so important. And the Sparkfly data that you receive, whether it's transaction or event, customer-focused behavior, you know, it's one approach to how Abhinav and his team ingest that information and then create insights from it. So maybe Abhinav, you could kind of take us through the Bikky platform a little bit, the conversation there, and talk about how you're building that data first foundation for brands like Postino.
I'm happy to. I just want to shout out, I track religiously how many people we have in the studio and who disconnected. You called me back on and someone immediately disconnected. I have their email address here. I will follow up with that person after this, but I'm excited to jump in and nerd out here, but I appreciate the segue and the setup, John. So Ellie, I think you and John did a great job of articulating the philosophy around best in class, around modular, and sort of what could be possible. I want to dive into like what actually is possible and get a little bit on what's actually happening on the ground. I think one of the most interesting things that we find when we start working with somebody is they always learn something new about their frequency. They always learn like, oh shit, I didn't expect we had that many new guests. I didn't realize that weekly guests actually we have so many weekly guests. Was there anything when, let's say you're bringing in Bikky, you're bringing in Sparkfly, we're up and running within the organization specifically, maybe not just from your perspective, was there anything interesting from a frequency standpoint that you learned about the Postino guest? And then from there, I want to segue into like the all important question of data is like, what do you actually do when you actually learn that thing? Yeah,
totally. And I should say, because I've not only been on brand side using you guys, but I've also had a stint as an agency partner. So I feel like I've seen a variation of the same kind of setup through different modes of our industry, and there are common threads that are happening between those. And so that always like solidifies, I think, what you're kind of alluding to is like Bikky provides a lot of points of reveal. Like you have a unique view and you're able to collate data in a way that's not usually accessible between like a POS transaction report, a loyalty report coming out of a CRM or an automation. Like what's so interesting about Bikky and why we rely on it, and I think it's such a strong tool, is because it's the macro. It's every transaction. You know, it is the majority, where your CRM, your loyalty, your e-clubs are always going to be a minority. So you get really used to, as a marketer, I think, looking at those more minority populations and extrapolating kind of some of the frequency back to the big guest population. And that's where sometimes I think your guys' data and your approach to audience lifecycle can across the board be an unlock. Because I think when I was first introduced to the concept of onboarding that you guys have as like a core station of life in the life cycle, that's really interesting. I think instinctively a lot of people say, yeah, there's like a warm-up period, but they're really thinking more like 1 to 2 means adoption, loyalty. They're going to keep coming beyond the 1 to 2 jump. Like we hear a lot of audience definitions of new and repeat, new and repeat.
Yeah.
Those are important, but to break down repeat by not only number of visits, time between visits, and then does that stabilize or does that fall off? I think you just have opened up so many dimensions for finance to think about, for ops to think about. Like, it's just a game changer in conversation. So I would say, like, when that kind of reveal happened at Postino, it really gave us a lot of different aspects to talk about and relate back to our traffic, our goals, what we were seeing overall, to start to define it by population type and assess internally, like, hey, how does that feel? Does that feel good? Does that feel known? Do our operators, feel connected to these insights too? And we've done a lot of work to blend that into especially 2026 planning and targets, because the more fluency that we have with the whole organization thinking about these populations as components to traffic, that in itself is a big move forward. And I think it's exciting to talk about someone who's got a first time visit versus who's in the crucial onboarding stage differently.
Yeah. Is there I think you raised something interesting, which was like decomposing the life cycle a little bit. And for people watching this, when we say onboarding at Bikky, we mean between 2 and 4, 2 and 5 visits, they're ramping up. And so I think, Ellie, what you're calling out is like religiously starting to track the number of days it takes to get through onboarding, the time in between visits, maybe the menu items that resonate with guests, that drive them faster through onboarding as well. Can you talk through, because we always talk as tech vendors, honestly, we talk about like, theoretically, here are all the things that you can do with it. And you touched on something very interesting, which is like, hey, we're actually going to operationalize this across the business. Is there a example of operationalizing it for finance or for ops that you feel like you are particularly proud of, or something that was different from maybe how you approached it at other brands that you've worked at?
Yeah, I think what we're putting into market this quarter, so just from a priority perspective, like the data that we had with you, the rebuild of our subscription program for the wine club is kind of like the first key milestone once all of the components were live. Like, all of the insights we were able to see in the previous club made fresh by you guys, like from a historical look back, has really helped us try to understand what we can be more predictive in our new club features. And so, like, that was really helpful. There's a lot of really cool learnings that are still unfolding, that we're in month 3 of that club now. But for our new to onboarding guest life cycle, I mean, we've used Bikky data and Bikky insights as the basis of separating these core groups out from the new perspective of, there's a set of people who come through who order kind of what we would call like key items off the menu that are our differentiators or our like strong points. And we can, again, qualify the bruschetta, certain wines that are proprietary white labels, like things that comprise probably the Postino way. We know the retention and sticky factor through you guys, like, so, which helps us to say these things when experienced. The message to that group on the coming back, the onboarding, is kind of see you next week. Like, let's do this again. Like, you're Postinoing the right way, because we can see from Bikky, like a macro perspective of those guests have higher frequency, they have higher retention, they do contribute to higher LTV. So, and then on the second side of that in the CRM, so as determined by check level data, great, you're Postinoing, let's continue this dance together. Hey, you've come through and you haven't kind of Postinoed, there's a way to like adopt, use, and celebrate with us. And I think that's especially helpful too, as we emerge into new markets and to grow audiences that are further outside of like our hometowns and our home markets, where we have more collections of restaurants closer to one another. It's very cool to be able to like directly use the knowledge in Bikky and activate through a CRM and say, like, this is predictive versus reactive. Because I think reactive is without the knowledge and saying, like, I don't know why they're not coming back. Like, I'm trying to sell them on everything to everyone. I'm putting together emails and text messages and landing pages that are every day part, every occasion, every menu section, LTO focused. And what I'm not aware of is, what's my best bet path in the absence of data, but the full data set is guiding me to likelihood it's better.
Yeah. So I think I think the way I understand it, I think that's really fantastic insight, because you're basically saying we know the menu items we know the menu items are the hits of the brand that specifically lead or more likely lead to repeat visits.
Yep.
Number one. Number two, from an operational standpoint, we can nudge people towards those things. And when they're in store, because full service, you can actually direct the guest towards those things. Number three, if they order those things, if they take that recommendation, you can split them out as a separate segment in your CRM, and you can already engage them with a level of familiarity that they're experiencing the brand in the right way.
Yeah.
Right. And if they are not doing that, you can split that out separately, and you can say, we want to nudge you back towards those hits on the menu, because that is the right way to experience the brand. And then number four or five, the next number up, when you are in a new market and you are introducing the brand to that group of guests for the first time, you can actually be hyper focused on guests who are less familiar with your brand, who maybe have only just heard of Postino that week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because they aren't in Arizona in a core market, and you can actually engage them in a totally new way that enables a higher level of brand awareness that is maybe not just centered on specific menu items, but centered on what's great about the brand overall, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like starting to get hyper localized in terms of how you think about engagement through the data, essentially.
You summarize it so well. And I know I'm such a tangential talker sometimes, but I think I would also be remiss of that also directly influences the creative that we place in front of these different audiences. Because I think that's also a really big part of personalization in our industry is show me the things that I order. Because from an appetizing perspective, if I'm telling you where I'm already going on the menu, I want to continue in that vein. It's much harder and it feels much more like a miss if we were to almost like skip over that data and say like, you are eating bruschetta and drinking wine, but we're going to show you, with no context, your next follow-up, a catering platter.
Right. Excellent. I think that's a good segue. I think we talked a little bit about this before I called John back on. I'll invite him back on now to touch on personalization. You touched on a little bit. My last question before I bring John back on is, what are some of the non-negotiable segments that you're running out of your CRM? I think you talked about it a little bit, where it's like touching people in the onboarding phase and delivering content based on what they order. Is there anything else from a Postino standpoint that you're like, this is non-negotiable, this is a segment we have to build based on what we know about our guests?
That's such an interesting question, because I think if you're in the CRM and you have a marketable status and you're someone who we can further the brand connection and create a relationship with, like, to be present in the CRM is almost non-negotiable from a segmentation standpoint. And then it's really on us as the marketers, as the creatives, as the team to really cater to that experience that we're setting up in our communications. And then the biggest payoff that we're still working towards with our ops, because we are very four walls focused, is how do we inform the store teams and kind of share the high levels of those segment profiles of those guest tags with them, so that their table interactions can benefit from the same knowledge that we have rolled up and summarized.
Mm-hmm. I call it clienteling, right? Is making sure that all this sophisticated data that you have at like your level also trickles down throughout operations, so that in-store experience can be like really truly personalized, like on the spot.
Yeah.
Right? You don't find it in so many places, because I think it's somewhat hard to do. I think you guys have done a phenomenal job of being able to execute on it in that way. How impactful has that been for just your frontline teams to have that level of confidence that they can walk up to an individual at a table and provide that heightened level of interaction?
Well, I think so. Definitely you guys are kind of our frontline in this first aspect of like, is someone in a guest engagement program? What are the barriers to entry between like me as the consumer with the digital wallet on my phone, QR code ready to scan, which is like a huge jump forward from us from like an accessibility standpoint in restaurant. And then from the server perspective of how easy is it for me to, grab that scan, type that phone number in, see this robust wallet, and understand based on what I see in the wallet, how I can guide someone towards pieces that they have that are accessible to redeem, and then also pieces of a wallet that indicate to me this person is a wine club subscriber. So how should that inform my conversation with them and direct them to the places in the menu that they actually have specialized and more deep access to?
Mhm.
And I think like as a first run, obviously with any new program change, like it takes a moment for it to trickle down all of operation and get reps in. But we're really excited by the seamlessness that it just leans into the technology. It's easier for them to adopt and manage and like personal interactions. So, as long as they can piece together between like what a subscriber is expecting to experience and how they can deliver on that hospitality, it does heighten the opportunity for them to make that connection in restaurant.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting. With respect to the data that you're able to derive and the segmentation as well as the journey orchestration that comes along with that to create that truly like personalized moment with your guest at any given channel touch point. You're through this process, you're really educating the guest, right? So your guests are actually coming in, they're experiencing the brand kind of uniquely, across the different segments, I would say that as you share more information about the wine club, right, or other programs that might be they might be engaging with, that level of interaction and education, how has that like really impacted like your guests? Have you guys seen in like any CX or otherwise like guest feedback that's saying, hey, like this strategy really prepared me for my experience?
Not so directly. And I'm interested too, because I think, we have a more limited subscriber set for our
Yeah.
wine club right now. But I think with some other guest engagement programs from a free tier perspective that we're working on, there will be a much wider population base to start to like gain that feedback and insight that's not so focused on like their program use and sort of like their experience with the benefits, which we have gotten a lot of that, which has really helped us shape kind of the in-restaurant training and messaging, and also just given visibility into the like engagement side of the redemption reporting, which I think is like really, really impactful. I mean, for us, we went from a program that was kind of like a retail program of grab your wine, go. It didn't really interact with the in-store experience, to see the unlock and the flexibility of being able to redeem a bottle in multiple dining occasions, to be able to have like a split occasion where you come in, you redeem one of your bottles at dinner, you take another to go with you. So like while the servers, operating a toast handheld and putting in all of these different aspects, which have different revenue centers and different dining notes between like don't make and open and to go, like the guest doesn't feel any of that friction because the program is strong enough to be able to like mask the guest from having to direct and say, oh, like I wanted it this way. And the program says, actually, it doesn't function like that. And now you're kind of putting the guest in this place of uncomfort of like, oh, like it's a little bit of a disappointment. So I think like even just the learnings from this like first kind of go through are really informing how creative we want to be and how localized we want to be with our next set of kind of like perks and enrollment. And it just gives us a blue sky to work with, which is pretty cool.
I love that. It's truly a difference between, hey, everybody gets 10% off,
Mhm.
and hey, this particular guest gets a certain wine pairing because they ordered these types of entrees or appetizers, right? Having that level of specificity for them as they come in, I think is truly going to set Postino apart in that space. I mean, it's going to be a truly personalized experience.
Thank you. I mean, that's what we're really holding ourselves to, that standard, because I think, we have a lot of four walls traffic. We're a very like experiential place, with alcohol, with small bites, with gathering spaces. We hear kind of anecdotally and through some larger guest feedback that we feel really safe as a first date spot. We feel really safe as a place for people to get together with friends. We are very like mix and mingle, come as you are. And we kind of need our digital programs to support that ethos and to be able to deliver on that too, because otherwise it's going to be very juxtaposed against
Mhm.
what the server team is trying to do from a team service aspect, what the guest is trying to experience from more of like a laid back experience. It's not, so transactional, which works really well in some other industries that are, have a digital POS system, kiosk, online ordering. That's like a little bit easier to just sort of like plug the reward into and get that as part of the transaction.
Mhm. Well, you're building culture, right? I mean, as you mentioned, right? I mean, it's a total culture move. And in the way that you kind of create that orchestration of all everybody's welcome, right? Come as you are approach. Um, how have you orchestrated like, and when you made the change, right,
Mhm.
from to the current stack, you obviously had to spend a lot of time kind of like orchestrating, like, hey, the Bikky data and insights has to flow into the CRM audiences and segmentation that has to flow into the Sparkfly delivery and personalization elements. So as you kind of went through that process, maybe like what did you find that was maybe like aha moments? And
Mm.
even like maybe like where were like challenges that you maybe had to overcome?
Yeah. And I think too, I almost look at CRM, CDP, offers management, kind of like offers guest engagement engine as kind of a little bit of a trinity where
Mhm.
everything has to speak between partners with using the data between partners. Like it all has to sort of sit on the individual record, but also be able to inform larger audiences. And so, because you can't get lost in the individual, but if the individual data set isn't strong enough, your larger audience initiatives are going to suffer because there's going to be too many people who don't fit the model of what you're trying to do from a campaign. It just will feel off to them. And like to your point, like it won't feel personalized. And so I think like really spending the time to understand and have an exercise of like, I know what data and in what capacity. So like, are there different time constraints? Or are there different like line item detail constraints? Is there anything that's preventing me from seeing the full picture of what I expect to be able to engage on? And just making sure that there's like a cross team awareness of intent. And I think, partnering really closely with both of your teams to build this system is the huge payoff. I mean, again, an all-in-one implementation road is very different and very much of, hey, these are the assumptions we've made on how you want to build your segments. Here's the assumptions we've made on your automation triggers. We kind of like go into our package, maybe marketed as simple, easy, turnkey. But what you're going to be in as soon as you're in that is these systems don't understand my business needs. They weren't built for your business needs. And so I think one hurdle I've talked to a lot of people about and like can very deeply empathize with is that you have to get yourself over that hurdle of if I need these systems to work on our business intelligence, then I have to put together providers who can provide me that level of detail and clarity and access.
Mhm. Now, I think that's such a great point because the master of none metaphor, right, is often so true in our world, and the ability to bring together specialized teams that are working on specialized technologies that are all working together, and that not only just like integrate together, but to your point, like even through like the integration process and the configuration process for Postino, it's like there is nuance, right?
Yeah.
There is nuance to that. And you have to be willing to work collaboratively to build to that nuance and make sure that you're filling those gaps and like all the data flows are working flawlessly, right? So that you're having the best technology outcome so that you can really work on that campaign strategy and like really diving into the insights to say, all right, what's truly meaningful for our guest and for the brand?
And I think it's also too, it's like it can sound so insurmountable, but I promise that I don't have a specialized background in data architecture. I don't have a data sciences background. I am a marketer through and through. I think it's finding the partners that communicate really clearly and have that collaborative spirit that can hear at a top level, hey, I need my program to address this kind of access of the menu. This is the kind of guest I'm going for. I really want to be able to hit them on this cadence and have this outcome in restaurant, online, wherever their exchange is happening. Like, a good partner can really help unpack the back end side of like what it will take. And I think that's the cornerstone of collaboration, is asking for and articulating your vision is on the brand, but the partnership really sings when they're able to meet that and hear that and say, okay, this is what it'll actualize to. Here's some things where maybe you have choices, considerations. Have you thought of this kind of moment? But you don't have to build this roadmap in isolation. And I think I've experienced that multiple times working with both of you guys and some other key partners, where it's just such a differentiator to not feel as though every decision and all of the logic in perpetuity for the life cycle of your time on that software platform rests on your shoulders prior to a contract signing.
Yeah. And I think it's such a misconception often in the space when you talk about best in class versus all in one, is that, I think a lot of the conversations I've had are like, no. The biggest brands do best in class. The emerging brands and mid-market side, like, that's just, we don't have the teams, we don't have the expertise possibly. And I think that, to your point, it's just not true when you have great partners that are willing to like stand shoulder to shoulder with you and then work through the implementation, work through all the nuance, and come out of the other end. And then again, start to continue to innovate with you and continue to bring that vision to life year after year. It's so important. And so I love to hear from your perspective that, you don't have to have a mega team, right?
Yeah.
To be able to execute on these best in class programs.
Yeah. And I think, that modular is built to scale. We're a growth brand. We expect to have more units, but we don't have, we're not a mega brand. We're not nationwide yet. But we need to start acting like we are and adopting those principles and creating those expectations with the guests and the audiences we do market to, because that's going to really help us when we're ready to accelerate. When you're ready to accelerate is not the time to look back and say, okay, what do I do about all these disparate systems that haven't really been working for me?
Oh my gosh, that's right. That's right. Oh. Well, it's an energizing conversation always with you, Ellie. Maybe we could bring Abhinav back.
I'm back.
All right.
Let's see how many people drop off this time. No, I think again, a very engaging and I think nuanced conversation around the whole dynamic between best in class and all in one. For housekeeping notes, we're heading into the tail end of the session. I have one, possibly two questions left for Ellie, and then we will roll into Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the questions button on the bottom right, and I promise we will get to them in the 12 to 13 minutes we have remaining here. But Ellie, I think one thing that popped out as you and John were talking was, we hear this a lot where people, big brands can invest in best in class because they can afford the price tag of best in class. And the way I have always framed it is like, okay, yes, I understand all in one is potentially, if you're just looking at the sticker price, is potentially cheaper. The thing that's going to power, three separate things across your tech stack, they can afford to charge a certain amount for their primary product and then effectively subsidize the cost of the secondary and third product that you're buying. So yes, all together, if you break that apart and you piece them together with integrated partners, the sticker price could be higher for sure. But the trade-off there, theoretically, you should be getting higher ROI, right? By having best-in-class specialized providers who all focus on their thing, you should be punching above your weight from an ROI standpoint. Now, obviously, you've been a big proponent of that route and you've gone that route. Is there any sort of early learnings, early ROI that you feel like is valuable to you and your brand that you'd be willing to share with the audience? Like, do you feel like that's true? Is that just vendor talk, or do you actually feel like that's true? And, if so, like, what kind of ROI have you been seeing from going in this direction?
I mean, I appreciate vendor talk because I do think ultimately, like, there's what I would say from an immediate ROI is like, I'm a small team, right? Like, what's my time worth? How much time do I have to spend in a disparate platform trying to cobble together the answers I'm looking for, the access to the segment that I want to market to, and the type of offer that I'm trying to create within the bounds of a more limited menu of functionality, right? Like I always kind of joke in software conversations, but hopefully this resonates with everyone who's on the call. It's like when you go to create a segment and all you have is a single and or, does that feel deep enough for the personalization challenge at hand? No, it's not. And so I think if you sit in a place where maybe the sticker price allowed you to start with that as a system, and doing 20% more personalization is better than 0%, but how long can that really last? And then what's the term length that you signed in that contract deal to get that sticker price? And how long is it going to keep you at 20% when you're expected to grow faster than that year over year from a return perspective? So I think like from, constantly wanting to punch above my weight, wanting to justify ROI in these really great campaigns that we're starting to roll out, and really to show movement in the audience lifecycle that we can directly impact through the CRM programs. Like if I can put myself in the best place to make the greatest gains in the next 12 months, that's going to pay off for me, the impact to the business, the impact to my team, the impact to, the team who's working these programs on the front line. And, it's going to create more return in different categories that is going to be very restrictive to me if I just try to make a system work that fundamentally doesn't have the functionality to support. So I would rather be faster to market with campaigns, be more predictive than reactive, feel more personalized than generalized. And so I think if you put those costs up front, you're putting yourself actually from a work perspective in a much more modular, flexible place.
I love it. That's a great answer. And then my last question here before we take Q&A is, zooming out, having these platforms in place, what do you feel like from an organizational standpoint, internally, at the corporate team, across your marketing stakeholders, your finance stakeholders, your ops stakeholders, as you guys think about and discuss the business and what's happening inside the business, has anything changed? Or what do you feel like is the biggest thing that's changed in terms of the conversations that you're having about the success of the business?
Yeah, totally. And the change is very positive and exciting because, again, I want to just say like the visibility into the what from a macro level really refreshes the conversation, and it kind of takes it away from the conversation being based on like instinct and more of like a P&L performance. And it gives it another dimension that's oftentimes missing in those cross stakeholder meetings of that like audience potential, frequencies they're showing, and like areas of impact where like the menu and the beverage programs can really make a difference when placed against a certain audience or a certain opportunity within the day part and within the occasion. So I think from a positive conversation and just like growth standpoint, there's a lot of excitement around building targets and addressing populations individually as segments versus, looking at our budget and saying like marketing lifts and drives traffic. What percentage of traffic? What do we think is going to compromise that traffic? What's organic from NROs and just like market awareness, right? Like the standard conversation. And so, there's with that understanding, we're really driving to a place where we can make the insights that Bikky and Sparkfly kind of give us from an engagement standpoint. Our charge is really to make sure in restaurant, those are accessible to the frontline team. I think that's where I will be most satisfied is if we're able to really put those insights in a server's hands, literally.
Love it. Amazing. Great place to end. There are no questions in the chat currently, so I will do one open call for questions. Now's your moment. Now's your chance to drop them in if you have any. Otherwise, I'll just take it that we crushed it. We did a great job. We fully satisfied the mandate of the topic here.
Yeah. Nothing, nothing.
Ask and answer. That's it. Yeah. While we wait, are you guys doing anything fun for the holidays? While we wait for any potential Q&A here?
Gonna just see family, just hang out, go eat and drink all my favorite things at home.
There you go. How about you, John?
Guys?
That sounds right. I'm staying in Kansas City for this one. Saw the in-laws my last trip for Thanksgiving. Kids are turning 6.
That's it. Yeah, I don't need any more.
I know, right? Kids are turning 16 tomorrow, my boys.
Oh my
So,
God.
Oh my God.
Congratulations.
big one. Yeah. So that's kind of the festivities for the week so far.
Yeah. Amazing.
That's awesome.
And
Amazing.
terrifying, but you know.
I was going to say 16-year-old twin boys. Like, I'll be thinking of you.
Yeah.
I know, right?
We did. Okay. So we did get one. Told you it worked. We just had to give people time. We did get one, and then we'll sign off here. What's the biggest business metric that's moved using both Bikky and Sparkfly?
Well, I'll be honest. I think they're not mutually exclusive, but I'll start on the Bikky side. Is LTV is something that we can actually, with a lot of confidence, start to track against. And LTV in relation to frequency, those are big metrics that we're really excited to bring on with like a lot of clarity around. And then from the Sparkfly side, I can't understate it enough that the flexibility of redemption in the relationship to frequency, and then also in the relationship to overall ordering behaviors, like just the fact that the Sparkfly data exists appended in all of these really important transaction places and rolls up into sales attribution and incrementality, huge.
Yeah.
Huge. So it's like not knowing provides a lot of mystery on performance, and clearly knowing lets us say, where can we improve? How are regions doing? How are operators doing? But it's coming from a place of reality versus just kind of off the cuff looking at an export and saying, well, we saw this many totes picked up.
Love it. We will leave it there. Thank you for those of you who dialed in or are watching the recording. I appreciate you spending some time with us here. Hope you got something out of it. To Ellie and John, thank you both for a fantastic conversation. And if I don't speak to you, or for those of you watching, if we don't speak to you, have a wonderful holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year, whatever you celebrate. Make it a great holiday season. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks, Abhinav. Thanks, Ellie. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.